who wants to be a part of it and has something to contribute, do a portion of the writing, and we could find the right place for that to go and maybe make some impact there. It could be like a framework. I don't think we have to have all the answers, but we could set up a framework for things that might work in developing countries and might make some of these carbon projects more attractive and more financially possible, and sort of have that multiple benefits perspective. So if that's something, we just have to make sure that I have contact information, that I can read everybody's information, and that those people who are interested in these different follow-up activities, maybe we need separate lists so that I don't forget anybody. But I'm seeing some head nodding. Does that sound like a good? Okay. Is that like?
Yeah.
I like that. Okay, so I will write on here that some sort of framework paper, perhaps more toward agroforestry challenges or opportunities, might be sufficient.
Another reason why we is that there is so much demand from communities to engage in these issues. But until now, especially in my country, in the Philippines, the gap is so huge, such that discussion and stuff like this is left to academics and professionals. Those communities on the ground barely have a chance to even engage, understand, and the yield of what we're talking about. That is something that is expected of us who work with indigenous peoples. We've been working with the community in monitoring carbon for the past 17 years, but still we're still groping in the dark. There's been so much demand from communities to group us, who want to understand all of this. While there is so much talk, there are so many materials purportedly saying that they're inviting communities, the reality is that when you go on ground, people don't understand what the hell these things are. It's still left in conferences like this. That's what we're thinking. How can we push it a bit further so that we produce materials or even facilitate activities that actually bring down discussion to the very people that at the end of the day will be affected or will be participating in this. Many communities want to engage, not necessarily to go to the market, but to fully understand what the fuss is all about. For instance, in a particular case, a community was able to use their data on carbon to fight off a mining application over their sacred forests. It was that argument when we put out our spreadsheets and said that at this point the potential, we're not saying we're selling it, but this is the biomass, this is our baseline, and the potential, if you sustain this, is a lot bigger rather than destroying that whole mountain. And they actually won the case. So a lot of communities are looking at this to bolster their arguments, but still there's very little chance for them to fully participate because of the very big gap in information.
So is that something we could work on as a larger group, or the Forest Service could help you take this type of, because anybody can learn this. I've done this with high school students. We've actually gone out in the woods, measured the trees, estimated our carbon, and I would certainly, whoever is willing, I'm certainly willing to work with you to develop appropriate materials that, we want to make sure they're culturally relevant and they relate to people where they are, because examples I might think of might not make sense to everyone. But that's certainly for anyone who wants to do that for your communities. I would certainly love to help you achieve that, and I'm sure other folks with a different perspective, because I've got it easy. I'm sitting pretty. I've got fancy laser rangefinders and field crews and all sorts of stuff. I still make my holes by hand though. But certainly, I think that's really important. These are things I don't know, and that's something we can fix that gap. We can work on that, and that is completely doable. There's absolutely no reason that people cannot get the information they need presented in a way that works for them.
And that is really needed and very relevant. We actually need it now.
And that's important to me. That's why I love doing things like these. I do it for different groups. It's important for me to meet you where you are and to try to meet your needs and help you take that next step. So again, I think maybe before we leave, we sort of need separate lists, so I make sure that everybody gets the follow-up activities they want to participate in. Because certainly I don't need to just do this alone. There are probably other people who have experiences that can help build good training materials. But thank you so much. I think that's a really important thing, and we can make a difference there as a group.
A quick question to you. People from USDA World Services. My study area is located in Southwest China, or in Myanmar, Laos. So pretty much climatic and geographic conditions are similar to adjacent east, south, and east countries, although it belongs to China. But they experience a lot like expansion of plantations. So according to FAO's definition, those are considered forests. And it becomes quite problematic when you think about MRV and baselines, because if you really depends on precise definition, you change the definition, you get different numbers. So from your perspective, do you think what should we do? I think the feasible way to make a separate category for plantation, but I'm not sure that it belongs to agricultural use or forest degradation. I haven't found any a specific guideline or even academic papers that I know it's kind of, it wasn't a quick question, sorry. I lied.
The reason I'm laughing is I'm part of a USDA project on carbon accounting rules and guidelines, and we're doing the forestry sector, and we've had this discussion. Really, plantation that is considered forest. And we did have a big discussion, should we treat this separately? But the consensus is, in fact, no. The baseline, though, baselines are awful, they're always really tricky. And so in that case, you might treat it the same, but you might stratify that and handle those acres separately with a separate baseline. The problem is there's no real rule book. All of this changes, there's no universal set of rules. So I think be consistent and just document why you made the choices you make. Have a document that lists your rationale for making those decisions, because there isn't one answer. And baselines are just one of those things that it's always tricky, but in terms of how you do the accounting, it really is the same.
Let me ask another question. The reason that I think plantation should be, at least from a carbon stock perspective, should be treated separately is because there are consistent deforestation and regrowth based on the crop cycle. If it's producing pulp, for instance, trees will be deforested right every 6 years, 5 or 6 years. The study area that I'm working on, they produce rubber, and the trees are cut. I mean, they're converted to like a fiber used to produce furniture every 25 to 35 years. So that's a different cycle, and I know it's kind of but so that's why.
So the reason I'm laughing is that you never want to stray, you never want to get inconsistent with the IPCC guidance, because that's the international. So you have flexibility, but you don't want to go 180 degrees from IPCC. Deforestation implies land use change. So if you cut trees, but trees return, that is forest remaining forest. So a plantation is forest. In order for that to be deforestation, it would have to be converted to agriculture or housing or grazing, some other land use. So that is why plantations are considered forest. As long as the land use remains forest, you're under that set of accounting rules. So you're just going to get, your baselines are just going to be your so deep problem.
In relation to that, how about the issue of whether using endangered species versus the use of exotic species? Because in the Philippines, one of the major concerns that we are facing now is trying to focus on our breeding efforts of using indigenous species. Because there is a controversy related to the use of other exotic species. What is the sequestration rate of indigenous versus exotic? Do you have data on that?
Thank you. Somebody else said it. Yes, it depends. It can be very much higher. It can be lower. In the United States, as part of restoration, we focus on, we tend to call them off-site species. So in the South, they planted loblolly pine everywhere. And now, a lot of times, there was something else called longleaf pine there. So usually what they're trying to do is remove, and when they restore it or replant, to try to put the actual native species there. Whether or not there's a carbon benefit, it can be other ecosystem benefits. You can't always justify that one on carbon. But certainly in the United States, and I think pretty much every place, outside of maybe specific plantations for wood production only, it's generally preferred to try to move toward replacing those exotic species with native species. There's just a lot of wildlife habitat, biodiversity benefits, but I'm not sure you can always make a carbon argument there. It may not go the way you want it to. But again, carbon is one value of many values in an ecosystem. So, it depends. So in terms of, I mean, this is good. I don't want to cut anyone off from Q&A, but I also don't want to miss anybody's follow-up ideas or needs, because we've had some really good ones so far. So is there anything in particular, any outcomes down the line that anyone else needs other than what we've heard? I know it's really hard to come up with something good on the spot. Maybe while you're thinking, do we have any haikus? Do we have a quiz? And it'll give you a chance to think about your program. We can't be like all technical constantly. We have to have some art.
Interesting combination. Geometrically immeasurability unbelievable.
Wow, that's very good. Mine are never that good. Wow, all right. Wow, you've set the bar.
I know. I don't want to do that anymore.
I should have done GPT that. What's your name?
Mine's
It's not
I know, I get that. I love that.
I had money has the lead, forests have diversity, carbon is the key.
We have to collect all of these. This is great. Does anyone else have one? Now nobody's going to say, is there, do you have it? No? Well, maybe that'll have to be part of our website. We'll have to collect haikus to inspire people. That's really good. I want to tell you when I'm right, because it's really bad. Okay. Anything else in terms of follow-up? Again, I'm really excited about some of these ideas. And I just want to make sure that we don't, and everyone has, I'll make sure everyone has my card, and I want to make sure I have everyone's contact information so that we can follow up. I can email you anything you need. But we do need to carry some of these ideas forward, and I don't know if we can set up, I don't do much with setting up bulletin boards and web spaces, but I know people who do. Would people be interested in setting up some sort of online forum where we can easily contact each other? It might facilitate working on some of these projects. You just want to email? Because sometimes you can have a site where you can post things.
I can reply all.
Reply all, okay. So we'll make sure that, I did have a sign-in list, but actually I'm going to pass this around and make sure, so we have everyone at the table, you very clearly have your name, where you're from, and your email so that I can read it. And well, I want to make sure that I have just, so I have the larger group, I want to make sure I have this group so that we can follow up on what we talked about today. So while that's happening, and so so we can continue that discussion online. Were there any other unanswered questions or experiences people want to share? And then when we're finished with that, I'll make sure folks get their certificates, and anyone who wants to stay and do a little bit of math on your laptop, I have that data. It's really not hard. And the staff would love it if you do your evaluations too.
Yeah, before you can last year, I would have liked to work on the hands-on methodology.
I just wanted to say that to last, if people want to get to the World Leaders Dialogue, that they're able to do that, so I moved it toward that end. Yeah.
Maybe this is country specific, but somehow want to your insights related to carbon ownership, because that is a major concern for us, for local communities and indigenous people. So who really owns the carbon? Because for us, the communities, the IPs are protecting the forest, so they should own the carbon. The government would somehow have a share. So
That's really a Red Plus issue, and governance and making sure the benefits, because again, the people who are most directly tied to it don't always have the land ownership rights, and so that is a big part. I'll have to talk to someone who's more involved in Red Plus, but I think it varies, but that's part of the whole Red Readiness, is ensuring the governance, because everybody's aware that nobody wants a few carbon barons, to get rich in the benefits, not to flow back to the community. And that's evolving, and the safeguards that Linda talked about, that's sort of an important part of the process. But that's one of those things that I think is going to be worked out country by country, but it might be interesting to see if there's a place where those stories are shared. And I'll try to figure out who to start asking about that, to see if we can find out what worked and what didn't.
But I suggest what you might consider under the Convention on Biodiversity and the Nagoya Protocol on Access and Sharing. Although that's related to genetic resources, but I think the principle is the same. So the guidelines that specify how you need to apply to share the benefits of whether it's known and community groups or whatever. They prescribe it, and some communities have developed a community protocol of how you go about engaging them and sharing those benefits. So you might want to use that as a template for sharing problems.
Thank you.
On the issue of Red Plus in UNFCCC meeting in Bangkok for the LDGRCA is still in process to discuss about this country like Philippines and Bolivia, they ask for the co-benefit and also the joint mitigation adaptation. This means they don't like the carbon market, they like the land market approach. This means indigenous people will have rights to share benefit, but still in the process to discuss. So this country have the representative in this, so the indigenous people can have the issue and send them and ask them to recognize this, or just communicate with the government in that country and share your idea for them. They will put in the procedure in the LDGRCA. And also now they don't have any conclusion about what they will do about the Red Plus. It's the issue of the finance, long-term finance, and also what is the definition of joint mitigation adaptation, what is activity that we will do with that joint mitigation adaptation. Even Bolivia is sending
because there are several layers of agreements
Yeah.
that you have to, and I think that was the thing with the Guyana example, you have to kind of layer. So, you know, we have the IPCC guidance that's just about greenhouse gas, but then when you layer in these other conventions and start stacking these benefits, you have these multiple considerations on that's an excellent.
In my country, we starting like us just policy just first year, this year. We starting with the community first. By we have some training or workshop to ask the community to know about red passport and red passport activity and red passport done. Even the policy maker, they don't know about the red passport. Just people who go to the convention, they know this. You know, if the policy maker don't know, it's also you cannot do anything with it. It's not the only that I educate people. And if after training you will have some training about the forest, carbon stock for the community to learn how to measure the